Hello and welcome. What are the challenges of living in space? Today we have the first for Al Jazeera, a very special interview with the astronauts aboard the International Space Station, 400 kilometers above the Earth. Astronauts on the ISS have been conducting experiments and collecting data to make scientific advancements, as well as to understand the mysteries of the universe. The first part of the space station was launched into orbit 12 years ago by the US and Russia, and the first full-time crew started living there from the year 2000. More than 15 nations took part in building the ISS, including Canada, Japan, and member nations of the European Space Agency. Well, after the interview with the astronauts, we'll be taking your questions for a senior NASA official as we discuss the future of space exploration. But first, we join Douglas H. Wheelock, who has completed 3 spacewalks during his tenure at the ISS. Tracy Caldwell Dyson, who spent over 305 hours in space since her first spaceflight in 2007. And Shannon Walker, who's up in the ISS for the first time. I began by asking her how it feels to be in orbit looking down on Earth.
I think just the fact of being here is pretty remarkable to me. I've wanted to be an astronaut my whole life, and I trained many years for this mission, and to finally be here and be living on the space station is mind-boggling to me.
Of course, here on Earth, we frequently hear astronauts describing how the Earth looks from up there. What were the emotions you went through? Describe what you saw as you looked out of the window.
It's really hard to capture in words what we see when we look out the window. It's the Earth is big and blue and beautiful, and just to see all the continents going by it really is amazing, and it's amazing to see so much of the Earth at once. You're kind of like you're riding in an airplane, but you're so much higher, so you can see so much more at once. I don't even know how to describe it.
Well, Colonel Douglas Wheelock, of course, a lot of our viewers wonder what a typical day is like up there in space. Give us a brief summary of how those 24 hours pan out.
Well, the first little bit of it is just kind of finding your space legs, where you put the last thing you're working with, and gathering your tools and supplies that you need for your science experiments and things. And you spend a few days learning that everything floats in space, and so Velcro becomes your best friend as you lay things out for your daily experiments and things. And so the timeline is actually pretty aggressive, and it gets better and better each day. But these first couple of weeks, for me anyway, I found myself kind of pressing up and using up all the margin in my timeline as I try to get my tasks done, and they tend to spill into each other just because it's taken me a little bit longer than I would have liked to set up and to tear down different experiments and things. But it's getting more optimal each day. But we spend a good part of our day doing science. Unfortunately, these first couple weeks I haven't had a lot of time to look out the window, which is something I'd like to do as the time progresses. But most of our day is spent with science and maintaining the space station.
Now, on this show, we try to let our viewers get a chance to connect with remarkable people like yourself. So we've got a question here from 7-year-old Fiona and 6-year-old Colin from Phoenix in Arizona. And they want to ask, Colonel, what's the strangest thing you've seen in space?
The strangest thing. Okay. Well, actually, on my shuttle mission, when I was able to go outside and do a couple of spacewalks, some of the neatest things that you see, the Earth is very, like Shannon had described, the Earth is actually quite distracting, because when you look at the space station and the space shuttle or the Soyuz, the colors, everything is very sterile looking. It's black or white, shades of gray, some metallic colors. And then, of course, deep space is so dark and so vast. And then you look at the Earth, and it's just like this explosion of color. And so the most amazing thing that I think that I've seen is when I was outside. We went around the backside of the Earth, and so the Earth was in darkness. But yet you would see like puffs of lightning underneath the clouds, and then fingers of lightning that stretch over hundreds of miles over the surface of the Earth. And it's just unbelievable, because even in the darkness, the Earth is just like raging with life. And that's probably the most amazing thing that I've seen.
Well, Dr. Tracy Caldwell Dyson,
just to add,
go ahead.
One of the most unexpected things is that during a lightning storm on the Earth, it actually acts like a strobe light reflecting onto the International Space Station. So when we're looking out the windows at night and there's a thunderstorm, a lightning storm below us, it lights up the space station and flickers just like in concert with the lightning below.
Well, Dr. Dyson, I had a question for you, actually. It's interesting. We see your new hairstyle. You're inspiring a new hairstyle here on Earth. Not quite sure what to call it, probably space punk. But wanted to ask you to take a question from our some of the kids we met at the Air and Space Museum here in Washington, D.C., and they had a question for you, and I want to get one here.
My name is Clinton Hickson. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and my question is, like, how do you guys like brush your teeth and rinse and stuff? Like,
you have to be a little careful when you do things like brushing your teeth. So we don't have running water, so we use water out of a drink bag, and I carefully put a few drops of water on my toothbrush and just a very tiny amount of toothpaste. It's amazing how much foam you can get out of a little amount of toothpaste. And then I brush, and then I get a towel and I spit everything out into a towel because I don't like to swallow my toothpaste, so I spit everything out.
Actually, Dr.
But
Walker,
it can be tricky because if you're not careful,
right,
toothpaste will go everywhere.
Now, how does food taste up there? Is the food taste changed at all? And you're up there in the International Space Station, sharing it with 3 Russians. Is your diet pretty much the same for all of you, or do you find you guys have different food from them?
I haven't noticed any significant change in my taste, and the food up here is actually pretty good. And we share food with the Russians, 50% American, 50% Russian. So we're eating both types of food. Actually, I wouldn't even say 50% American because we've got food from Japan and from the Europeans as well. So we have quite a variety of food, and it's everything from meats and vegetables to desserts and soup. So we eat quite well up here.
We've got another question from our kids at the Air and Space Museum here in Washington, D.C.
I am Janelle Souders from Harrison, Ohio.
I am Brittany Leppert from Harrison, Ohio.
And our question is from a teacher's perspective and a student's perspective. We want to know what classes are important that you should take, what subjects you should study to be an astronaut.
Well, certainly math and science are very important courses. We need kids to be very smart in those areas to help us continue this program. But as we evolve in the space program and we expand beyond low Earth orbit and go into other worlds, other planets, we're certainly going to need other skills as well. And who knows what tomorrow's astronaut is going to be like. The 3 of us have got backgrounds in science and engineering, as well as aeronautics and with other skills that are as vast as our food variety up here. And to that end, I would say to all the kids that the most important thing that they do is to do their best always to do what interests them, because in doing so, they're going to that's going to bring out their best. And if they have an interest in science, then to pursue that. And if they have a fear of science or math, to pursue that even harder, to ask the questions so that they can understand it, because you're talking to somebody who got a D in calculus in college their first semester, so it can be done.
Let's squeeze in one more question. We wrap up with a question from one of our space enthusiasts at the Air and Space Museum. Let's get this question in from them.
I'm from New Jersey. I'm 12 years old. I have a question. How does it feel to ride a spaceship?
Well, this is Doug, and it's a great experience. Actually, back in 2007, I had a chance to ride on the space shuttle, and then this trip up, I rode on the Soyuz, and so it was a great experience comparing the two. But close to launch, just within a few minutes of launch, you can feel things happening underneath you, and it brings to reality that you're sitting on top of a rocket, and so you can hear valves closing and mechanical things happening underneath you. And I'm thinking that in a couple of minutes this is going to be quite a sporty place to be in. And when those engines ignite and you first lift off the pad, there is some vibration, but and you can feel, of course, the acceleration as you aim towards the heavens, and so it's quite a exhilarating experience. It's actually in the scheme of things, it's quite short. It's only about eight and a half to 9 minutes, and you're in space. But we train for that first 8 minutes of our 6-month space flight. We train just extensively because it is the most dynamic. It is the most probably fraught with the most danger as we launch to space, and it is quite exhilarating.
Well, from all our viewers around the world, thank you so much for joining us from up there in space. Stay safe. God bless. Speak with you again, I hope.
Thank you.
That was the crew aboard the International Space Station talking to me earlier. When we come back, we look at the future of NASA's space program, including the mission to Mars. Don't go away. Welcome back. What chance is there of life on other planets, and how soon before humans land on Mars? These sorts of questions have driven mankind's exploration into space for over half a century, and we still don't have any definitive answers. That doesn't mean we won't keep asking. And with us today is NASA research scientist Dr. Christopher McKay, who joins us from Mountain View in California. He's currently researching the evolution of the solar system and the origin of life. Dr. McKay is also actively involved in planning for future Mars missions, including human exploration. Now, you can call him with your questions and comments for him, or just send us an SMS or an email. Dr. McKay, good to have you with us, sir.
My pleasure.
Yeah, the anniversary of man walking on the moon for the first time is coming up, 20th of July, 1969. So 41 years have passed, basically. How much real progress have we made in that time?
Well, going to the moon was a big step, and in a sense, what we've done since then has been a little less spectacular, but still in the direction of taking humans beyond the Earth to explore other worlds. Ultimately, we will reach Mars, we will get there, maybe not as quickly as one would have guessed watching the first humans step on the moon 40 years ago.
Well, we had an email from a viewer, if I could put this to you, sir, from Danny Yar, who wrote in asking, does the US or China plan to colonize the moon or any other planet in the near future? Now, I know that back in April, US President Barack Obama said that we've pretty much had enough of the moon, but he did make and he stopped plans for another lunar landing, but he did make plans or commitment towards deep space exploration. What did you make of that? I mean, are we over the moon, so to speak?
Well, the long-term goal within NASA is clearly Mars, establishing a permanent research base on Mars. But that's a long-term goal. Clearly, there's things we need to do before that. And on that list of things to do, there's bringing samples back from Mars, there's learning how to sail in deep space, and I think establishing a base on the moon. Whether you argue that a base on the moon is the next thing we should be doing or something that's in the queue to be done eventually, I think is a matter of planning and finances and just laying out a roadmap. But I think that if our long-term goal is Mars, we need to do all these things, and eventually we will be doing more on the moon too. Whether it's near-term or far-term, right, is certainly up for discussion.
Well, Dr. McKay, you were the scientist who found hints of life on Saturn's moon Titan. It would be methane-based life, which sounds really amazing, considering that we've always had I guess we'd call it a carbon arrogance, thinking that life forms could only be carbon-based. So what sort of extraterrestrial life are we talking about?
Well, the curious thing about Titan is that it is another world like Earth with a liquid on the surface, but the liquid is not water. The liquid is liquid methane. So if life can make do with that liquid instead of water, then you might imagine life on Titan living in liquid methane. And when we first considered this many years ago, we said, well, if this is true, then that life should be consuming hydrogen and acetylene. And recently, results from the Cassini spacecraft indicate that hydrogen and acetylene seem to be depleted at Titan's surface. So it's not proof of life on Titan, but it's certainly curious that what we predicted would be the effect of life is what, in fact, we're now finding. So that's sparked some interest in the possibility of a very alien type of life on Titan, one that lives in liquid methane instead of living in liquid water.
Now, considering that movies nowadays, Hollywood movies, make almost anything look possible, has it become, has the public's expectation been blown out of proportion? Is it hard to get the public excited about space exploration?
Well, it is a curious effect. The popular culture has outpaced the scientific reality, and when I talk to audiences about human exploration of Mars or about finding life on Mars, some members of the audience think we've already been there and think we've already found life, and so they're curious as to what we're doing. And then I explain to them, no, we're still stepping down that path and we haven't arrived there yet. So it is an interesting play between the popular culture and the scientific fact.
Let me get another question in from one of our viewers that wrote in from Australia. James Ivan wrote in saying, can we expect alternative energy sources to be developed through scientific experiments in space? Is that being explored?
Well, currently the space station and the shuttle use energy generated by fuel cells. The shuttle uses a fuel cell to generate energy. That kind of technology is a technology that could have applications here on Earth. Companies are developing fuel cell technology. Of course, the station itself has huge solar arrays, which is also a technology that is being investigated here on Earth. The efficiency of the arrays used in space is quite high, and it'd be nice if we could have such high efficiencies arrays down here on Earth. The other possible contribution of space to Earth's energy is the notion of putting up huge solar arrays and beaming the energy back down. That's been considered for some time, but there's been a lot of issues with implementing that kind of energy. So it's hard to say where energy production in space might lead.
Well, Shaukat on the line with us from the United Kingdom. Shaukat, thanks for being with us. What would you like to ask?
Yes, I'd like to ask a similar question, just what the guest just answered. What's the chance of finding new forms of energy or resources that we can use in this world, in other planets? Thank you.
Dr. McVeigh.
That's a good question, and we can ask the question, what will we learn, what will we benefit from exploring other worlds? I think it's possible that we will get some resources, material resources, but I think more likely the resource we will get is information. As we explore Mars and study another possible type of life or another possible ecosystem, we will learn about life, we will learn about biochemistry, we will learn about how planets work with life, and that knowledge, more than any material property, will be useful here on Earth in managing and maintaining and improving the quality of life here on Earth. So I would say the major export of Mars to Earth, the major resource to be obtained on Mars for benefit of Earth is information. Information about biochemistry, biology, and about how planets work and how we can manage planets with life.
Now, on the issue of Mars, we had an email that came in from Fazil Abu Bakr, who says, if the atmosphere on Mars qualifies for human life, can we live there? Now, I know you mentioned about getting to Mars, but is it realistic to suppose we might actually colonize the planet?
That's an excellent question. Can humans live and work on Mars? We assume that the answer is yes, and NASA and other agencies plan for human exploration on Mars, assuming that the answer is yes. And the key question is not so much the atmosphere. We know that the gases in the atmosphere could support life. The key question, in fact, is the gravity. Mars's gravity is 1/3 the Earth's gravity. Well, we know that 1 gravity is okay for human life. We know that 0 gravity causes profound changes in human physiology. Well, where on that spectrum does 1/3 fall? If 1/3 is more like 1, then okay, we can colonize Mars. We can establish long-term research bases on that world. But if 1/3 gravity has the same physiological effect as 0 gravity, then that means that we will only be going to Mars for short stays. It is not a place for long-term human habitation. So this is an open question. And I find it a very interesting question because it's a question that can only be answered by sending humans there. Many of our questions about Mars can be addressed with robots, but the question, can humans live and work on Mars, can only be addressed by actually sending humans.
Now, Dr. McVeigh, you're at the cutting edge of NASA's work. What excites you the most about the way the organization's moving forward in terms of space exploration?
Well, what excites me the most about NASA's plans is that we are moving beyond Earth orbit again, going back out into what I call deep space. The moon near-Earth objects, Mars, whatever the destination is, we're moving out. And there's a commitment to move out, to learn, take what we've learned on the station, in the shuttle program, and move beyond that into deep space. And I think that is very exciting because that will take us to Mars, it'll take us to the moon, it'll take us to the small objects of the solar system, and humans will be able to explore these many interesting worlds. And I think that's a challenge for the decades, many decades ahead.
And of course, private entrepreneurs have taken a greater interest. Do you see that actually boosting NASA's work? Do you see that actually helping the way forward?
I think the participation of private companies can only be a positive thing. It can broaden the technology base, it can broaden the support base, it might even drive the costs down. So I see the broader the participation in space, the better it will be for everybody involved. And that goes both for companies as well as for nations. The more nations involved, the more companies involved, the bigger the pie, the more slices there is for everybody.
And of course, as we were talking about the expectation of the public changing, what do you think can be done to keep the public excited about NASA's work? What do you think would help get them energized about it too?
Well, I think that the two things that the public really relates to is scientific discovery and human exploration. We see it in the astronauts exploring and doing scientific experiments in the space station and the shuttle. We see it in the public interest in the rovers, in Hubble, in results from the Cassini mission.
Okay.
The public likes to learn the science, likes to see humans doing it.
Well, Dr. Christopher McKay, great talking with you. Thanks for being with us, sir.
My pleasure.
Thanks for joining us too. Remember, you can follow our program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified on upcoming shows. You can send in questions and comments for our guests for that. But on the next show, the devastating price of spilled oil while the world focuses on the tragedy unfolding in the Gulf of Mexico. What's being done to clean up similar oil spills around the globe? Not much at all, it seems. Find out about that on the next show. We'll see you next time.